In a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine just the other day, friend and colleague, he shared with me a remarkable observation and commentary of the nature of the Christian life. That is, the nature of our life in discipleship to Jesus Christ. He said, what God has for you in the future, what lies ahead of you, is much more important than what is in your past. What God has for you in the future, what lies ahead of you, is much more important than what is in your past. And it is at once an observation which reminds us of where our attention ought to be directed. That is, it is to be directed on the future. It is to be directed on what lies ahead. But it also, I believe, serves as a warning, in the sense of a kind of wake-up call to the fact that we, if we're not careful, might become consumed by our past thoughts, by our past words, by our past behaviors. Or we may allow ourselves to become boxed in by how others have thought of us in the past. So much so that we get comfortable living with those labels, comfortable living within those boundaries, comfortable living within that box. We begin to think of ourselves in the terms that others think of us, and we get stuck there. We get stuck there in the past, unable to move, or perhaps more accurately, unwilling to move. What God has for you in the future, what lies ahead of you, is much more important than what is in your past. A quiet day held here during Lent, some of you may recall that our facilitator for the day made a similar observation and comment to those gathered. He said to us that the past is for reference and not for residence. The past is for reference and not for residence. And again, it is a reminder that while our past is obviously something that we cannot completely disregard, it is important that we see it perhaps more helpfully, more hopefully, as a source of useful lessons. or as the basis from which we will make dramatic changes in our lives, transitions in our lives, but never as somewhere that we determine that we are going to take up residence, that we're going to pitch our tents and live there. The past is for reference and not for residence. And I draw these observations to your attention because I believe that they are at work in our gospel stories for today. But they are also at work in the gospel in general. And they take on rather a particular and a unique significance when we are referring to the nature of the Christian life as a response of obedience and faith to Jesus Christ. Jesus is the one who comes, as we think about our stories for today, he is the one who comes and enables us for a life of righteousness. He enables us for a life of faithfulness and a faithful living in response to him, despite what others may think. Despite what others may think about our past, despite what others may think of where we have come from, despite what others may think of this Jesus whom we endeavor to follow. In today's gospel reading, we first meet Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, who came to Jesus in the midst of a great crowd which had gathered around him, and he threw himself at Jesus' feet, and he begged him, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her so that she might be made well and live." So just imagine for a moment that as a leader of the synagogue, I'm sure that Jairus obviously knew what the other religious leaders thought about Jesus. They saw him as a threat to their comfortable existence, their comfortable state of affairs, particularly regarding their social and their political arrangements under Roman rule. And Jairus also knew that associating himself so publicly with this Jesus meant damage to his own religious credentials among the elite. What are they going to think of him now? You know what we think about Jesus, and here you are throwing yourself publicly at his feet, begging for his help. You see, Jairus came, and in faith, he threw himself at Jesus' feet because his daughter was near death. In that moment, it did not matter to him what others thought about him. It didn't matter to him about this public display before Jesus. As a leader of the synagogue, Jairus pushed beyond all those kinds of fears because he knew that Jesus could help. He knew that Jesus could lay his hands on her and she would be made well. Then in the very next moment, we meet a woman, a nameless woman who was suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. So imagine that's like from 2006 till now. Imagine 12 years. It's a long time. But she pushed her way through this very large crowd that Jairus also encountered. And she did so because she was desperate for a cure. She wanted to be healed. She had heard about this Jesus. And here he was passing by now. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." And so here was a woman who knew not only the physical and the financial burdens of this disease, not this ailment, but she also knew the social and religious isolation that came along with being considered ceremonially unclean. She couldn't even be part of her own Jewish community with this illness. So it had been suggested by some that this unnamed woman thought that perhaps a large crowd would provide the kind of cover that she needed to get just close enough to this Jesus without being detected. While this might be true for the crowd, it was not so for Jesus. Jesus knew that she was there. But her not wanting to be seen, her not wanting anyone to recognize her, or wanting to hide perhaps would suggest that she herself was personally acquainted with the shame that accompanied someone with this kind of illness. No doubt she was well aware of what others thought of her. In small communities, word spreads very quickly, right? You have some issue, everybody knows. So I'm sure she knew what others thought of her as well. But like Jairus, she still came. And in faith, she pushed away from the crowd. She pushed beyond all these kinds of fears about what others might think, what others might say about her, in order to touch the clothes of this one whom she knew would make her better, even if the doctors could not. See, so often it is easy for us to get caught up in the miracle that we miss the message and the one toward whom it points. Yes, Jesus raised the daughter of this important synagogue official back to life. Yes, Jesus cured this woman of an otherwise incurable disease and illness, and he gave her the shalom, he gave her the peace, he gave her the wholeness and the welfare of God. But I believe that their message for us, which is perhaps more significant here, is their response of faith to this Jesus, which pushed, which moved, which beckoned, which invited them to step out beyond their fears into a new future that is shaped and more determined by faithful obedience to Christ, by coming to this one. What God has for you in the future, what lies ahead of you, is much more important than what is in your past. We may not have the particular concerns of Jairus or of this nameless woman. But as Christians, I suspect that we will all, at some point along our journey, we will all have to reckon with the fact that this one who calls us and draws us to himself often calls us beyond that which we fear the most. And he does so if we are going to truly follow him in a life of faith and in a life of obedience. For some it might be like Jairus, a fear of losing face, fear of losing our reputation in the midst of those whom we respect and whom we want to respect us. For some it might be that crippling fear of what we already think others may think about us. For others it might be that fear of what we think of ourselves. Sometimes we keep ourselves in a box. That fear, the only limitations that we have placed upon our own lives and what we are capable of. This last Sunday, you heard one of our young people read a poem, Our Deepest Fear, by Marianne Williams. So you may recall the first verse of that poem, which reads that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, she writes, not our darkness that most frightens us. And in a similar way, I believe that very often as Christians, our deepest fear is the power of God that will flow through our lives and our community if only we respond to him wholeheartedly and in faith and obedience. Sometimes I think that we are terrified of the prospect of having that light shine, his light shine through our own lives. And what that will then mean for our lives thereafter, because we will be changed, we will be transformed, we will be made new people. And yet the willingness of God to share his power, to share his light with his human creature is nothing but the manifestation of the love of God. God so loved, he gave his only begotten Son. He wants that light to shine through our lives into see, this good God whom we serve is inviting us on a journey. He is inviting us on an adventure with Him. A journey and an adventure which will require great courage from us if we are not to be stopped, if we are not to be hindered by our own fears and by our own apprehensions. But you see, we cannot know all the details of that adventure ahead of time. All we can know is this one who journeys with us, and that this one who journeys with us, my friends, is faithful. That He is attentive to our needs, that He is attentive particularly to the needs of those who are often ignored and neglected. So therefore, my prayer for us is that we may indeed become that community of faith, that we may become that people of God, which in the world of St. Paul's is always forgetting what lies behind, straining forward to what lies ahead. The past is not for residence, it is for our reference. What God has for you in the future, what lies ahead of you, is so much more important in God than what lies in your past.